discover the animal that pees out of its face, how snakes breathe fire, and the insane way kangaroos sacrifice their babies. These are the weirdest animal facts ever, with each one weirder than the last. For many years, people snorkeling, surfing, and fishing in the shallow waters around the Floridian coast have been terrorized by a mysterious phenomenon called stinging waters. Jellyfish are a nuisance enough as it is, but being stung without even coming into contact with one? That's just unfair. At first, the sensation was blamed on detached tentacles that might be floating around in the water, but in February 2020, researchers made a surprising discovery. Jellyfish snot can actually sting you. The upside-down jellyfish, or Cassiopeia zamachana, which can be found in shallow tropical waters, has developed an amusing and, honestly, kinda lazy way of hunting its prey. The creatures lay on their backs and throw globules of venom-enriched mucus into the surrounding water, which can cause an uncomfortable itching sensation when humans touch it. The snot grenades might not be lethal, but these jellies need to learn some manners before sneezing on innocent bystanders.
What's that?
If the animal kingdom was to form an Olympic diving team, you'd probably expect the poor old moose to be one of the final picks. But the joke's on you because moose are actually pretty great swimmers. Being the largest members of the deer family, moose have a pretty huge appetite. In fact, each animal needs to eat about 24 kilograms of plants a day, which can be difficult during Canada's short summers. Fortunately for them, moose are adept swimmers and they can actually hold their breath for a whole minute, so they have no trouble checking out the nutrient-rich plant life at the bottom of riverbeds and lakes. Those big old nostrils aren't just for show either. They actually act as valves that keep water out like a snorkel as each moose dives up to 20 feet deep. So few people know about this unexpected talent that there have been plenty of reports of suspected lake monsters that have turned out to be a moose just trying to get some grub. If you're a cat owner, you might understand what a blep is. If you have absolutely no idea though, a blep, as the internet has kindly named it, looks a little something like this. Basically, if your cat sticks its tongue out and forgets to put it back in its mouth, it's blepping. It might look totally unintentional, not to mention outrageously adorable, but science says otherwise. According to animal behavior consultant and cat expert Amy Shojai, blepping is actually related to the way cats investigate their surroundings. The scientific name for this mouth agape face is the Flehmen response, which cats use to collect pheromones on the tongue. When these are transferred to the internal scent mechanism or vomeronasal organ on the roof of their mouth, they can detect the sexual status or other information about other cats. Pretty much any interesting scent can be explored by blepping. That means that when your cat looks like it's forgotten how its tongue works, it's actually just being a fluffy little detective. Most people are afraid of becoming a stereotypical crazy cat lady, but the most terrifying thing about this prospect is that if you pop your clogs alone, your cat won't hesitate to eat you. At an American Academy of Forensic Sciences conference in New Orleans in 1992, a forensic pathologist explained that without their owners around to fill their bowls, pets have no trouble tucking into their owners' decaying bodies. Tasty. This phenomenon, known as postmortem predation, causes domesticated animals to revert back to primal instincts, and food is food after all. There have been countless cases where bodies have been recovered long after their beloved pets have decided to have a cheeky nibble. While dogs will generally wait about a week or so before giving in to their appetites, cats have been known to reach for the salt and pepper after just 48 hours, and they'll usually go for the softer parts like your nose or lips first. I hate to break it to you, but your precious furball is actually a total jerk. It's just science. Kangaroos can't walk backwards. I know what you're thinking. Kangaroos don't walk anyway, they hop. Well, alright, smarty pants, but they can't hop backwards either. Their long feet, oddly shaped hind legs, and heavy tail make it impossible to walk in either direction, so they push off with both feet at the same time instead in a hopping movement officially called saltation. Although their muscular tail helps with balance and acts as a sort of third leg, this is also what sadly prevents kangaroos from moving in reverse. Some people even believe that the Australian coat of arms features a kangaroo and an emu because neither animal is capable of walking backwards, which apparently symbolizes a nation constantly moving forward. Plenty of animals have super cool defense mechanisms, and kangaroos have a little known natural reflex which is interesting to say the least, if not a little counterintuitive. You see, if a mother kangaroo is threatened by a predator like a dingo, she often turns to a foolproof distraction technique, throwing her baby in its direction. You might be thinking, but then the baby will die, no? Yes, the baby will probably die. But if it means the adult kangaroo can make a quick getaway, that's a sacrifice she's willing to make. It might seem like a totally savage move, but there's actually some twisted logic in there. If the adult kangaroo is killed and eaten, then it can no longer reproduce, so she's essentially sacrificing one baby so that future offspring can live. If a mother kangaroo falls on hard times while she has multiple babies in different stages of development to care for, she might also abandon one for the sake of the others. There are plenty of interesting relationships in the animal kingdom, but none are quite as strange as the rather one-sided arrangement pearlfish and sea cucumbers have going on.
Hello.
Tropical, shallow water-dwelling sea cucumbers are pretty bizarre creatures.
You're one ugly
These odd, cumbersome lumps spend their days sucking in sand, extracting anything nutritious out of it, and then pooping it back out again. It's no secret they aren't likely to win the title of nature's most beautiful anytime soon. They're considered so repulsive that most predators won't even go near them. That, however, is precisely why the pearlfish is so interested in getting to know the sea cucumber more. Let's say, intimately? You see, a sea cucumber breathes by taking in water through its anus, so the sneaky pearlfish will just wait around for the right moment to swim right inside. The sea cucumber acts as a perfect hidey hole for the pearlfish as well as other sneaky creatures like crabs. Now that's gotta hurt. It's long been determined that pretty much all mammals fart, but sloths have a slightly different way of emitting nasty methane. Scientists had a tricky time figuring out exactly how or even if sloths toot, but all was revealed in the hard-hitting expose, Does It Fart? A Definitive Field Guide to Animal Flatulence, published in 2018. In the book, co-author Danny Rabbiati, a PhD zoology student, explained that although they eat a lot of plants, sloths avoid releasing gas normally because of their slow digestion. Being generally lazy creatures, sloths only poop about once every 3 weeks. Unfortunately for them, if gas is accumulated in their intestines over that long a time, they'd get sick or, even worse, explode. Don't worry though, because the methane is simply reabsorbed through the intestines into the bloodstream and then respired out of the lungs, resulting in literal fart breath. Gross. Speaking of gross, although most people have never encountered one, it's pretty well known that you should never get on the wrong side of a skunk. Unless you want to get a face full of their potent butt spray. But what exactly is this noxious substance, and why do the North American mammals need it? Skunks are nocturnal creatures, and their predators rely heavily on scent to navigate in the dark. So skunks developed a clever counterattack, a yellow liquid full of stinky chemicals from their anal glands, which they use to chase off predators. The toxic oil is stored in the anal sacs and can be fired out of their butts up to 3 meters away. In fact, skunk spray is so potent that it can knock out or even kill a dog. Thankfully, humans aren't so susceptible, but it can still cause burning, nausea, and respiratory issues. You see, the spray includes chemicals called thiols, which are sulfur-containing compounds that help give the liquid its awful stench. Once it's been ejected from the butt, skunk musk is highly effective as a way to avoid physical confrontation and for buying extra time to escape from predators. Thankfully for us clumsy humans, skunks will only use their spray as a last resort. First and foremost, they rely on their black and white coloring as a way of sending a message that says, "Don't mess with me, fella." They'll also do a little defensive dance and rely on a series of hisses and foot stomps like a toddler throwing a tantrum. But if all else fails, it's time to bring out the big guns. Biologists have noted that skunks rarely die from being killed by predators, so it seems to work. Then again, who'd want to eat something that just farted in your face? All dogs bark, right? Well, except for the Basenji, that is, the dog breed that categorically cannot bark. The Basenji is one of the oldest breeds to be officially recognized by the American Kennel Club, and it was originally bred as a hunting dog on the African plains. Perhaps one of the reasons they were so successful at hunting is because they could sneak up on their prey like a silent predator. Basenjis aren't totally mute though. When they open their mouths, they tend to make a sound which is something like a chortling or yodeling. Don't believe me? Check out Phoenix the Basenji having a good old sing-along. It all has to do with the anatomy of the breed's voice boxes. Although the Basenji has all the same parts of the vocal box as other dog breeds, slight differences in their makeup prevents the Basenji from being able to get a good hearty bark out because the vocal cords don't vibrate normally. Honestly, their adorable efforts are what make them totally unique. You go, little buddy. If I were to ask you what's going on in this image, which was captured by amateur photographer Mark Perot in 2015, what would you say? Looks a lot like that fuzzy little guy is peeing as he zooms through the air, right? Wrong. Insects' bodies are totally different from our own in many different ways, and you might be surprised to learn that they actually lack lungs per se. Instead, they have something called spiracles, which are tiny holes that cover the surface of their bodies through which air passes and diffuses straight into the tissues. Many insects have some degree of muscular control over these spiracles, which means they can control when they open and close them to avoid unnecessary water loss. But for bumblebees, things are slightly different. You see, bumblebees need their entire body weight in nectar to fuel their flight, but nectar has a high water content, which means the insects need to get rid of some of it. To maintain a good balance and avoid flooding their bodies, they excrete the excess water through their spiracles in a jet through a process known as water voiding. It's like their own personal jetpack. Allow me to introduce you to the Anthony Joshua of the insect world. Just kidding. Those flexed arms and brutish boxing gloves aren't actually arms at all. In fact, you're probably looking at this bug all wrong. This is a macro photography image captured by 56-year-old Javier Ruperez and shows the red palm weevil, a beetle that usually grows up to 4 centimeters. The red palm weevil is characterized by a prolongation of the head in the form of a beak, and the funky hairdo on its head is actually special bristles which male beetles use to detect females. Its antennae are appendages below its beak which it uses for feeling, smelling, and tasting the environment around it. Red palm weevils are native to tropical Asia but are infamous for damaging palm trees. The pests have since spread to Europe, though there's not a lot of palm trees to ruin over there. These insects may look pretty unassuming from far away, but when shot this close up using a macro lens, they look like they're ready to square up. I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of one if I were a puny ant. Forget dragons. What if I told you there was a fire-breathing fish out there? You probably wouldn't believe me, but check it out for yourself. Spoiler alert, that isn't actually fire, but these fishy fireworks are close enough. The fish in question is the cardinal fish, which lives and feeds on or near the bottom of the ocean and can be found in the Banggai archipelago, an island group in Indonesia. When the cardinal fish sucks up tiny ostracods for its dinner, the bioluminescent sea creatures emit a burst of light. And when those bad boys light up, creating a light show inside the fish's mouth, it's really bad news. You see, the last thing you want to do when you're a little fish in a big bad ocean full of predators is attract attention to yourself. That's like sticking a glow stick in your mouth and saying, "Hey, come eat me." So when the ostracods light up, the cardinal fish panics and vomits them back up again. This ultra-cool defense mechanism is the result of a light-inducing chemical reaction mixture inside the ostracod, which is set off whenever they're jostled. The cardinal fish would love to steer clear of the tasty morsels, but some species of ostracod might not react this way. It's like the ultimate game of snack roulette. Plenty of people are afraid of snakes, and what I'm about to tell you now probably won't ease that fear. They can breathe fire. Now, let's be clear, I'm not suggesting all snakes are secretly fire-breathing dragons, nor that this occurs under everyday conditions. In fact, you'll probably never see this terrifying talent in action, but that doesn't mean it couldn't happen. To create fire, you need 3 things: a flammable material, a spark, and oxygen. As you may know, a naturally occurring flammable gas known as hydrogen is produced at the tail end of the human digestive system and is passed by flatulence. When most mammals die, a layer of mucus that protects the stomach lining disappears and the stomach acids begin to digest the stomach itself alongside other internal organs. This results in a buildup of hydrogen inside the body, which can sometimes cause it to burst, Henry VIII style. Let's say a decomposing deer body bursts inside a python. The gases would be released all at once into the snake's stomach, causing it to belch out a burst of concentrated hydrogen. Now all you'd need is a lone spark from some nearby campfire to drift into the path of this burp, and voila! You've got yourself a wingless, fire-breathing dragon. There are plenty of facts that prove animals aren't as unsophisticated as we think. Just get a load of this. Crows and ravens hold funerals for their dead. They may not put on all the works like fancy caskets and funeral cars, but they are already dressed in black, so that should count for something. Both birds are proven to be incredibly intelligent animals. In fact, they possess the reasoning capacity of a 7-year-old child. For example, they've been known to place nuts on the road at red traffic lights so that the cars will run them over and crack their shells. It shouldn't really surprise you then that they are one of the only other creatures to ceremonially honor the dead. When a crow or raven discovers the body of a dead companion, they start calling out to the others. Once enough birds have arrived, they hang about, sometimes for days, making a harrowing racket. Eventually, they peel off one by one until there are only a couple of birds left to pay their respects before they too leave the remains behind. Mass screaming and squawking might not be the most heartwarming send-off, but hey, at least it's something. The frozen Arctic probably isn't the ideal environment for a caterpillar, unless you're a woolly bear caterpillar, that is. This bizarre creepy crawly starts feeding on vegetation the moment it hatches in autumn, but by the time the Arctic winter hits, the inevitable happens. It freezes solid. Now for most animals, including humans, that would be game over. But when spring finally comes back around, the caterpillar defrosts and continues munching away like nothing ever happened. It does this by producing cryoprotectant in its tissues, which allows it to freeze its heart, followed by its gut, and finally, its blood. Some winters in the Arctic can last 11 months, which means it will thaw and eat for just 1 month before freezing again. Although some woolly bears have been known to survive as many as 14 winters, when they finally metamorphosize into the tiger moth, they ironically have only a few days to find a mate before they die. Seems like a bum deal to me. This image might look like one of those online Photoshop challenges, but this funky caterpillar really does exist, and that fashionable headgear isn't just for show. This is the Urobolugens, aka the Mad Hatterpillar, which sheds its exoskeleton only to stack its old molted heads precariously on top of each other rather than throwing them out. It sounds kinda gross, but there's a method behind the madness. The little critter, which is found in Australia and New Zealand, molts up to 13 times while still in the caterpillar phase and starts to build the tower of heads around the 4th molt. As the caterpillar grows, each empty head is bigger than the last, meaning it can be stacked and carried around easily. Aside from being a fashion icon of the insect world, the function of the head hat is to protect the caterpillar from predators. It might seem that the tapered tower of skullcaps would only make them more visible to birds, but birds aren't their only worries. They also have to deal with parasitic wasps and other predatory bugs. In these cases, the heads can actually act as false targets, prolonging the time it takes for the predators to get a clear shot. Pretty clever, huh? There are some pretty freaky defense tactics in the animal kingdom, but none are quite as gross as a Fulmar chick's. In case you didn't quite catch it, that adorably fluffy chick is literally throwing up in self-defense.
Disgusting!
But it gets worse. This isn't just any old checkup, it's stomach oil. When they feel threatened, these seabird chicks have learned to spew a stream of sticky, smelly, bright orange digestive oil up to 6 feet away. And if you happen to be a predatory bird, being sprayed by stomach oil isn't just utterly repulsive, it's lethal too. You see, this gloopy oil glues the predator's feathers together so that it can't fly. Things go from bad to worse when the attacking bird goes to the ocean to wash the oil off, finds that it's lost its buoyancy, and drowns instead. This is because the oil interferes with the locking mechanism of the feather barbs and displaces the insulating air, which is usually trapped against the skin, leading to hypothermia, flightlessness, and loss of flotation. The smell of the vomit also acts as a warning to the chick's parents, who will approach the nest cautiously in case the predator is still lurking. Apparently, even chicks that haven't hatched yet can squirt the liquid out of a hole in their eggshell. Now that's a party trick. Life as a puny insect is full of dangers, and being eaten alive by a larger predator is a pretty gnarly way to go. But one species of water beetle has a unique way of escaping this almost certain death through the back door. When Shinji Sugihara from Kobe University in Japan presented the pond frog Pelophylax nigromaculatus with the aquatic beetle Regimbartia attenuate during a series of experiments in September 2019, the frog quickly swallowed the beetle whole as expected, but then things took an unexpected turn. In 93% of about a dozen experiments, the beetles miraculously reappeared after slipping out of the frog's anus alive and well. Sugihara speculates that the beetle has evolved this defense against the frogs in their marshy habitat. Though muscles typically hold the frog's anal vent tightly shut, those muscles loosen up when the frog poops, meaning the beetles could be somehow stimulating the frog's defecation reflex to temporarily open this emergency exit. Once swallowed, the beetle travels the dark, perilous, and airless path through the esophagus, stomach, small intestines, and large intestines. From end to end, this journey took a minimum of 6 minutes, but in most cases the beetles emerged between 1 to 6 hours after being eaten. The unconventional passage wasn't without its own drawbacks, though. According to Sugihara, the triumphant beetles were frequently entangled in fecal pellets, but they recovered fairly quickly. Ever started feeling a little peaky after you made a risky decision to eat that lasagna that's been sitting in the fridge for too long? Fortunately, you can get rid of the bad microbes by throwing it all up again. But if you're a frog, you have no such option. You see, if a frog eats something toxic, it can't just vomit it up. It has to eject its entire stomach. This process is called full gastric diversion, and it works basically the same way as dumping out your pockets. Once it is thrown up its stomach, which is now hanging out of its mouth, the frog will use its front feet to wipe it clean and remove any stray bits of food. Then it'll pack the whole thing neatly back into its body, where it will remain until the next time the frog makes a mistake and eats something it shouldn't. It might surprise you to learn that frogs aren't the only animals that can't vomit. Horses, rabbits, and rats can't chuck up either, but only a select few creatures can turn their tummies inside out. Sharks are also capable of full gastric diversion, which helps them to avoid poison and evade predators. It's impossible to know exactly how a frog feels before they chuck up their stomach, but it's safe to say a little green is a good guess. Bats are iconic animals for many reasons, mostly due to their association with vampires. And one of their most well-known traits is their ability to sleep while hanging upside down. But is there a reason why they choose to take 40 winks in such a bizarre way? Unlike birds, most bat species, with the exception of the New Zealand short-tailed bat and the vampire bat, cannot launch their bodies into the air from the ground because their wings simply don't produce enough lift to take off like a helicopter does. While a running start might help them out, bats also suffer from having hind legs that are just too tiny to gain enough speed for liftoff. So bats have no choice but to claw their way up to a high enough spot where they can let go and fall right into flight. It's actually pretty clever because if a sleeping bat needs to make a quick escape, they are already in a prime position to spread their wings and fly away. If humans were to hang upside down for a prolonged period of time, all the blood would rush to our heads, but bats have got that covered too. These crafty fanged creatures have one-way valves in their arteries which stop them from getting dizzy like we do. You see, the same one-way venous valves us humans have in our legs that keep blood from pooling to our feet are reversed in bats, stopping blood from flowing backwards and rushing to their heads instead. Plus, hanging upside down is a pretty great way to hide from danger. During the hours when most predators like birds of prey are active, bats congregate cleverly where few animals would think to look, and most can't reach. And considering other flying animals don't have the ability to hang upside down, there's less competition in the roosting spots bats choose. Talk about a win-win. Humans and animals share many traits, but you'd be surprised to know that we are almost alone in the practice of burying the dead in graveyards, except For ants, that is. The difference is that ants don't do this out of respect like we do. In fact, it seems like dying is nothing but an inconvenience for these puny insects. When an ant dies, its body is left where it fell for at least 2 days until it starts to produce oleic acid, the odor of which alerts the colony of its passing. The corpse is then carted off and buried in a designated area or graveyard. In a scientific experiment, researchers dropped oleic acid onto a live ant and watched as its fellow ants swiftly came along and carried it off despite its best efforts to demonstrate that it was still alive and kicking. This led to a key discovery as far as an ant is concerned. If you smell dead, you are dead. It's a little more complex than that though. The smell of decay comes from harmful bacteria, and as ants live in such close-knit colonies, one dead ant could cause a total catastrophe if it isn't quickly removed from the equation. It's a cruel world out there. How cruel? In autumn 2012, 69-year-old farmer Terry Vance Garner went to feed his hogs, as usual, only this time he would never return. When his family went looking for him, all they found inside the pig enclosure were his dentures. It soon transpired Garner had fallen and been overwhelmed by the 700-pound hogs, which then consumed him. It sounds like the makings of a low-budget horror flick, but here's a fun fact you probably never thought you'd hear. Pigs eat people. In 2019, a Russian woman suffered an epileptic fit while feeding her hogs and was eaten alive. 6 years prior, a mob boss was fed to pigs by a rival family. These are just a couple of instances where pigs eating humans have hit the headlines. But what people like those twisted mobsters really want to know is, can pigs make a body disappear completely? The truth is that pigs will eat pretty much anything given the chance. Swine are naturally omnivorous creatures, meaning they will eat meat if it's put in front of them, even though their diet in the wild would mostly consist of leaves, roots, fruits, and flowers. They've even been known to eat pork if they can find it. Pigs cannot chew the larger bones of the human body, so they will break them down into smaller, more manageable pieces. But there are other parts like teeth, fingernails, and hair that simply aren't digestible and will inevitably be left behind. That explains why Garner's dentures led to the shocking truth, and why those who have tried to use hogs to cover up a heinous crime have always been caught. So the answer is, almost. Here's something you've probably never pondered. Unless you happen to live with a bunch of farmyard animals, you cannot lead a cow or a horse for that matter down a set of stairs. You probably wouldn't have much trouble guiding them up, but it would take more than a few kind words of encouragement to head back down. This is a mystery that can be solved with a pretty unsurprising statement. Stairs aren't found in nature. You see, these animals can't easily see the ground right at their feet, and the design of their bodies prevents them from walking in a downward direction. Most staircases slope at an average 35-degree angle, which would be a pretty steep hill for any cow to take on in the great outdoors, let alone one carved into tiny human-sized steps. Cows' hips and knees aren't made to help shift their weight backward to avoid them tumbling headlong down the steps. Considering most cows weigh between 1,600 to 2,400 pounds, I'd say their fear of stairs is pretty rational, wouldn't you? In case you need reminding that lobsters are some of the most bizarre creatures on Earth, get this. They pee out of their faces. And each other's faces, as their own unique way of communicating. You see, a lobster's bladder is located underneath its brain, which is connected by the urinary tract to two urine release nozzles that are located at the base of their large antenna. When lobsters pee, they also produce pheromones through the urinary system, which allow them to communicate. Basically, pee is released from the face and injected into the current produced by the lobster, which projects it forwards. It's even been measured that these urine signals can be ejected up to 7 entire body lengths ahead of them, which is some pretty powerful peeing. Generally, lobsters don't get along. If two males bump into one another, you can almost guarantee a brawl is gonna break out. So where does peeing come in? To prove to the ladies that he's the strongest, the winning lobster will pee in her direction. Because he's happy with his victory, the urine will contain serotonin, which makes it smell nicer. This is one dating technique you definitely shouldn't try at home. When someone says they eat with their eyes, it usually means they size up their food before gobbling it down. But if we're talking about frogs, that phrase takes on a whole new meaning. Scientists have often pointed out how frogs tend to scrunch their eyes tightly shut while eating, but now it seems like this behavior serves a more literal purpose than just showing they're enjoying their meal. As it turns out, some frogs and toads are able to press their eyes down into their mouths to help push food down their throat like a personal trash compactor. In 2004, a team of biologists from the University of Massachusetts put this to the test by focusing on the northern leopard frog. X-rays showed that their eyes did in fact retract into the mouth to force food towards the pharynx. So the researchers decided to cut the nerves to the retractor muscles to see if it could still swallow. The frog was still able to eat, but they concluded it had to swallow twice as much to get each piece of food down. Who knew? Your eyes might come in handy the next time you're in a hot dog eating contest. The defensive abilities of some animals really leaves you scratching your head and thinking, this is how you evolved to defend yourself? Case in point, the horned lizard. Several different species of these horny little dinosaurs squirt streams of blood from their eyes in self-defense in order to confuse and frighten predators. When threatened, the lizards can restrict the blood flow leaving their head, and the increased blood pressure ruptures blood vessels around their eyelids with enough force to squirt onto attackers. Thanks to the presence of chemicals in the lizard's bloods that naturally taste foul to predatory canines and felines, this bizarre tactic can save the reptiles from becoming lunch. Despite how strange and frankly scary it looks, the horned lizard's defensive blood squirt is actually a surprisingly effective defense measure, especially against squeezy humans. Deep-sea anglerfish are peculiar creatures indeed. This creepy variety of fish are known for using bioluminescent bacteria living inside their bodies as lures to catch prey. In many anglerfish species, the females are much larger and more impressive looking than the males, and when it comes to mating, anglerfish get creative. The male clamps his jaws onto the female and releases an enzyme that begins to digest the skin of his mouth as well as her body. Gradually, their flesh fuses together along with their circulatory systems. With the male contributing a constant supply of sperm for reproduction, the female provides all his nutrients through their shared circulatory system. Some species of anglerfish even see multiple males latching on for a free ride. Talk about clingy boyfriends. Clearly, size doesn't matter for those strange little swimmers. When it comes time for the Arabian camel to mate, he gets dressed up for the occasion, but not in a tuxedo. This hooved desert dweller attracts mates by inflating its palate, which hangs out of the side of its mouth, surrounded in a thick layer of drool. The frothy spittle around the mouth dribbles out as the camel emits a low gurgling sound, part of the attraction process, which is capped off by the camel peeing on its own tail. The pee is enriched with female-attracting hormones, but with a face as fresh as this, I doubt he'll need any additional help. And if you thought that was gross, when a male giraffe is interested in a female, he will approach her and begin rubbing his face against her backside until she urinates. When she does, he'll lap up a mouthful and have a taste like some kind of disturbed wine connoisseur. Doing this, the male can taste whether the female's urine contains the hormones usually present during ovulation. If he detects the hormones and deems her a suitable mate, he'll continue the mating process. It's a pretty simple way to gauge whether a potential mate is suitable or not, but personally, I think I'll stick with asking, do you like pineapple on pizza? If I were to tell you that there was an animal out there that could breathe out of its butthole, you'd probably call me a madman. But it's absolutely true. During cold winters, most turtle species enter a temporary slowed-down state known as brumation. They take extended naps throughout this period in two strange ways, either by burying themselves in mud or sleeping underwater. If humans were to do either of these things, we'd obviously die from lack of oxygen, but turtles have a secret weapon: their butts. Hear me out. I'm not suggesting that turtles just stick their butts out of the water and use it like a snorkel. You see, turtles poop, pee, mate, and give birth through one common hole known as the cloaca, or one hole fits all as I like to call it. Some species of aquatic turtle also have structures known as cloacal bursae, which are equipped with blood vessel-filled tissues that oxygen can be absorbed through. It just so happens that water is filled with oxygen, and these turtles can siphon it right out for themselves. They take in water via the cloaca, it's then shunted to the bursae, and the oxygen is drawn out. It's perfect for a deep-sea snooze. That's right, it sounds crazy, but turtles really can breathe out of their rear ends. Well, it's not literally breathing, as the lungs are connected to the trachea, mouth, and nose, not the cloaca. But it does allow the animal to take in oxygen, just like breathing via the, back door. Good enough for me. For most turtles, butt breathing is only about 20% as efficient as respiring, so they still have to come up for air. The Australian white-throated snapping turtle, aptly nicknamed the bum-breathing turtle, can actually get 70% of its oxygen this way, and judging by its face, it wants you to know it too. Man, imagine if we could breathe out of our butts. While they're often associated with negative things like evil and death, ravens are actually an incredibly intelligent species. Sometimes, though, their intelligence takes on some truly bizarre forms. For starters, it turns out ravens and other corvids have remarkable mimicry abilities.
You alright? You alright? You alright?
And will put them to use to solve problems. For example, if a raven comes across a dead deer but can't break through the thick hide to access the juicy innards, the raven may imitate a wolf or fox call. This attracts predators to the scene with big enough teeth to rip the carcass open. Once the predator's had its fill, the raven tucks into the newly opened buffet. But imitation isn't the strangest of ravens' behaviors. Ravens are often seen lying on ants' nests, encouraging the ants to climb onto their bodies. But they're not looking to eat the ants, they're just looking to bathe in them, which may seem crazy, but actually serves an important purpose. Most species of ants have a certain amount of formic acid in their bodies, which is an effective chemical at killing parasites and bacteria. Ravens will press the ants against their feathers and skin as they climb around their body, releasing the formic acid and giving themselves the feathered equivalent of a squirt of hand sanitizer. Some research has suggested birds may also derive pleasure from the stinging sensation of the acid on their skin, though this is inconclusive. If it turns out to be true, though, I certainly hope the ant massage trend doesn't catch on among humans. Take a look at this creature. Looks like a worm, right? Well, it isn't one. And it's not a snake or an eel either. This is a caecilian, and it's an amphibian similar to frogs and newts, except most caecilians don't have any legs. These slimy amphibians live mostly underground and dig tunnels by ramming their hard skulls into the dirt with the support of their strong spines. The caecilian's worm-like appearance isn't the weirdest part, though. When the mothers of the species give birth, they grow an extra layer of skin, rich in nutrients and fats, which their offspring feast on with sharp little teeth. This practice continues until the youngins are big enough to hunt their own food. Luckily, the mother isn't completely devoured by her children, though. The skin regrows every 3 days to continue providing the caecilian's young with plenty of their favorite food, medium rare amphibomom. If you thought the caecilians gave up a lot for motherhood, wait till you hear about the desert spider of the Stegodipus lineatus species. When the mother spider's eggs hatch, she begins to digest her own body, breaking down and regurgitating her insides as food for her offspring. She continues this as long as she can, saving the vital organs until last. Eventually, once almost everything has been digested, the mother begins to tap her legs onto her web. This triggers a predatory instinct in her children and, like a starting gun, encourages them all to tuck into her body directly. They inject her with venom, liquefying her remaining innards, and feast upon her until there's nothing left but an exoskeleton. I once cursed in front of my mom and felt guilty for days. But after learning about these horrific mother-eating spiders, I feel like a saint in comparison. No one takes fashion to the extreme quite like the assassin bug. Certain species within the assassin bug family have a very morbid tendency to wear the corpses of their fallen foes as costumes. They start by grabbing their prey with their long mandibles and injecting them with paralyzing toxins that liquefy their insides. They then slurp the unfortunate creatures dry and glue their exoskeletons onto their back with a sticky secretion, continuing to stack corpses until they've amassed a disturbing assortment. But why? Well, covered in corpses, the assassin bug is well camouflaged, meaning as long as it stays still, predators will have a hard time spotting it. Its macabre outfit also smells just like the insects it preys on, meaning it can sneak into nests and ant colonies undetected. Once inside, it's just a matter of pouncing on unsuspecting residents, sucking them dry, and gluing them onto the stack. Pure nightmare fuel. Just be grateful these things aren't human-sized. These colorful creatures, known as parrotfish, spend much of their time using their beak-like teeth to nibble away at coral reefs, and have quite the unusual bedtime routine. About an hour before going to sleep, they spew out a load of thick mucus from their mouths. This forms a sort of cocoon that's somewhere between a transparent sleeping bag and a mosquito net in function. By surrounding themselves in this mucus, they mask their scent from predators and repel parasites from making themselves at home on the parrotfish while it sleeps. The mucus is also thought to help repair bodily damage thanks to its antioxidant properties, while simultaneously serving as an early warning system if any predators come poking around. Not bad for a fortress made of spit. The noble penguin is a well-loved creature the world over, but that's only because most people haven't seen a penguin poop. When these little guys have to go, they really go. Like most birds, penguins' bodily waste comes out of a single opening called a cloaca. When penguins feel the call of nature, pressure begins to build up in their rectum to a point where, once they finally unleash the inner beast, it shoots out with impressive speed. In fact, in what was undoubtedly one of the most important scientific studies of all time, researchers found Humboldt penguins send feces flying at almost 5 miles per hour. While penguins may be flightless, their doogie bombs regularly fly distances exceeding 4 feet. Unfortunately though, while the high-pressure poop's distance is intended to keep the pooper's nest tidy, there's rarely consideration for the other penguins in the area, which results in penguin-on-penguin poop crimes surprisingly commonly. Although in fairness, taking a look at how much of a fecal coating this guy already had beforehand, either he needs to learn his lesson already and move out of the way, or he's probably into it. And now you'll never look at Pingu the same. Many humans feel incomplete without a romantic partner. You might even be one of them. But no matter how strong your desire for companionship may be, it ain't got nothing on a female ferret in heat. When a female ferret reaches sexual maturity and goes into heat, she will remain in heat until she's able to mate with a male. Being in this constant state of sexual readiness takes a severe toll on the ferret's body. If her needs aren't met, the elevated levels of estrogen in her body causes a reduction in the number of blood cells produced by her bone marrow. This lack of blood cells, or anemia, can prove fatal. That is, until she's allowed to get down and dirty. So yes, despite what your evangelical aunt insists, sometimes doing the deed can save lives. So feel free to incorporate female ferret physiology into your next pickup line. Just make sure to post it in the comments below first. As cute and innocent as tortoises seem to be, they procreate just like the rest of us filthy animals. While you may think of tortoises as quiet, peaceful creatures, this is mostly true, except for when they mate. When tortoises go at it, each thrust is accompanied by a noise from the male unique to each type of tortoise. We have the strange little squeak emitted by smaller shelled fellows. Then we have these disturbing thunderous bellows from giant tortoises. Hilariously, these kinds of noises even occur when a tortoise has mistaken a tree stump for a potential mate. It may sound like E.T. doing karate, but it's all natural. While the jury's still out on the noise's exact purpose, it seems to be a simple matter of asserting dominance. Not that it makes it any less unnerving. For humans, virgin births are mainly religious territory. But for certain members of the animal kingdom, reproducing with only one parent is a fact of life. Take the fearsome Komodo dragon, for example. When a female Komodo dragon finds herself in the mood to reproduce, but there aren't any males around, she has the astounding ability to fertilize her own eggs. Thanks to a process called parthenogenesis, the female modifies her reproductive cells to serve the role of both mother and father, allowing her to reproduce completely solo. What's more, a Komodo mother may even mate with her own offspring once they reach sexual maturity, all in an attempt to maximize her bloodline's survival. Of course, there's a reason most animals prefer not to keep it in the family, like this. Breeding with your own offspring decreases the genetic diversity of a population, upping the chances of hereditary illnesses and reducing the chances of new positive traits being inherited. But when the pickings are slim and the desire to create life comes a calling, the Komodo dragon can always depend on number one. Saves having to put up with deadbeat dragon baby daddies, I guess. Aside from being the colorful star of Finding Nemo, the clownfish doesn't seem too remarkable at first glance. But truthfully, the clownfish exhibits one of the most intriguing behaviors in the aquatic world. Clownfish live in small colonies consisting of a few male juveniles and a mature breeding male and female. The breeding female is always the head of the colony, but if she dies, something truly bizarre happens. The breeding male takes the helm, changing his sex to become the new matriarch, while one of the juveniles takes on the newly available role of breeding male. It turns out all clownfish are born male, but their sex organs are able to transform to meet the needs of their social hierarchy. As only the breeding male and female in a colony reproduce, there's no competition among the other males, ensuring an unusually harmonious existence, just as long as everyone remembers the right pronouns. While it's pretty rare for an animal to be able to change its sex, a surprising number of species pretend to in order to make their lives easier. Male garter snakes, for example, will occasionally utilize a female disguise to improve their own chances of reproduction. By giving off a strongly scented pheromone, usually given off by females who are ready to mate, the male snakes end up being piled on by dozens of other males. By putting up with these males trying unsuccessfully to mate with them, the deceiving male steals their body heat. This heat allows him to move faster and more energetically, and in turn increases his chances of successfully mating with a real female, at least once he's escaped the rather unpleasant swarm of randy males. The male scorpion fly utilizes an even ballsier tactic to secure a mate. Usually, scorpion flies attract female suitors by bringing them prey as a gift. The bigger the gift, the more interested the female tends to be. But the male scorpion flies who aren't very good at catching prey skip that step by getting someone else to do it for them. By mimicking the bodily movements usually exhibited by females, the male tricks other males into bringing him food. When the food arrives, the disguised male attempts to fly off with it and present it to a real female. This only tends to work in about 1 in 5 times, as the attempted theft usually ends in a fight. But these female impersonation attempts are still more successful than brute force thefts without the female mimicry. Which means for male scorpion flies, shaking their behind in just the right way can make Valentine's Day much more affordable. As you've probably already realized, reproduction can get pretty weird in the animal world. But no one does it weirder than the flatworm. Many species of flatworm are hermaphroditic, meaning they're in possession of both male and female sex organs. When mating time comes, the worms use their penises to try to stab each other, impregnating the loser in an act known as penis fencing. I'm not kidding. Whoever wins is free to continue to roam the world, stabbing babies into others, while the loser absorbs the winner's sperm and must bear the offspring alone. How rude. Not even a phone call. All over the world, people who own ostriches have to deal with a very strange behavior exhibited by their feathered friends. That is, they tend to be a little flirty. Male ostriches are regularly seen performing the mating ritual dance that's usually reserved for female suitors of their own species, aimed directly at humans. It's thought that this flirtatious dancing may be triggered by ostriches mistaking the similar height or stance of humans for members of their own species. In other circumstances, ostriches may perceive humans, perhaps due to our fancy clothes, as romantic competition and may dance to reassert their dominance. Either way, I don't know how anyone could resist those moves. For some people, the sight of a moth flapping its big dusty wings around a darkened room is enough to send a shiver up their spine. But there's something genuinely creepy about moths that most people aren't aware of. Certain species of moth, when their usual sources of sodium run dry, will find salt in another form, by drinking animals' tears. Usually targeting large mammals like deer, but occasionally sleeping birds too, moths will tuck their long nose-like proboscis under their target's eyelids and begin slurping away. Thankfully, it's painless for the tear donators, but it's still terrifying for the rest of us. These strange, slithery creatures are known as a hagfish. With bone-plated mouths lined with teeth, they feast on carcasses on the seafloor from the inside out. But when a predator comes along with a taste for hagfish, they're met with a nasty surprise. When held or even just touched by a predator, the hagfish releases mucus which reacts with the water, forming a thick gel that helps them slip away. The mucus can also suffocate fish unlucky enough to get it trapped between their gills, something hagfish use to their advantage both in defense and when hunting. Hagfish slime is so thick and slippery that when a truck transporting the creatures crashed in Oregon in 2017, firefighters needed to use 5,000 gallons of water to clean the highway. But I'd say they should have just left it and turned the road into the world's slipperiest slip and slide. As a wise ogre once said,
"Better out than in," I always say.
But while that saying might sometimes be true for humans, it isn't for anyone standing near an angry bombardier beetle. These insects, despite being less than an inch in length, pack a serious punch. When aggravated, the beetle opens a valve inside its body, triggering a chemical reaction that rapidly generates heat and pressure. The resulting chemical cocktail, containing 1.4 benzoquinone, an irritant to the eyes and respiratory systems of vertebrates, then sprays out of the beetle's rear at close to the boiling temperature of water. The chemical spray is ejected in a pulsed pattern at a rate of about 500 pulses per second, which prevents the beetle scorching its own body. Anything close enough to take a hit from the beetle, which can swivel its spray through a 270-degree angle for highly precise aim, learns quickly that bombardier beetles are not to be messed with. Usually when animals defend themselves, they're trying to avoid damage to their own bodies. But for the Spanish ribbed newt, its main line of defense involves damaging itself a little in favor of increasing its damage against predators. Bizarrely, when the newt is agitated, it tenses up its body, swinging its ribs outward with enough force that they pierce through its skin. With its ribs now protruding through, they function as defensive spikes, and these not only make the newt a prickly meal, but they also bring the risk of piercing predators' mouths, making them more vulnerable to the milky poison the newt also secretes from its skin. The newt, meanwhile, is immune to its own poison and can quickly recover from the defensive practice with no ill effects. For many predators, this bizarre act of self-mutilation makes this newt too much of a mouthful. And on that disturbing mental image, I've had about as much as I can take of these animal facts. Which one did you find the craziest? Let me know in the comments section, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.